So, let me set the scene for you. My name's John, and I'm a 32-year-old guy who's been running a small but pretty successful graphic design business for the past 5 years. It's not massive, but I've been comfortable, and I've built it from scratch, blood, sweat, and tears. Honestly, I'm proud of what I've achieved. Now, there's my brother-in-law, Mark. He's in his late 40s, married to my sister, and has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He's one of those guys who talks big about business opportunities and leveraging assets, but somehow always manages to act like he knows better than everyone else. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, just that he has that smarmy, always waiting for the right moment to strike vibe. Mark's been trying to get me involved in his brilliant business ventures for years. Every couple of months, he'd call, pitch me something half-baked, and I'd listen politely before moving on. To be honest, I never took him seriously. The guy has a history of making things sound a lot more glamorous than they actually are. You know, flashy car deals, investment opportunities, that sort of thing. But a few months ago, something shifted. He started acting, well, different. He'd come by more often, hang out at family gatherings, and get into these deep conversations with me about how we could really scale up if we worked together. I could tell there was something more to his interest now, but I couldn't quite figure it out. Then came the day he dropped it. The proposal. It was casual at first, like the others. Over lunch one weekend, just the two of us. We were talking about business, as usual, and then out of nowhere, he mentioned my company. He said something along the lines of, "You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about your business, John. You've got something good here, but if you're ever looking to take it to the next level, I've got an offer that could really benefit you." I didn't bite right away. I wasn't in the mood for another one of his pitches. But Mark's tone was different, more earnest, almost like he'd been planning this for a while. He looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm serious. I've got this contract, and if you sign it, I can help you get your business into the big leagues. It's a no-brainer." At this point, I'm feeling the tension building. I know Mark. I know how he operates. And this felt like more than just a regular business talk. Something was off. But then came the kicker. Don't worry, it's just a formality. All you need to do is sign this document. It'll give you the resources you need. You can always pull out if you don't like how things go. I wasn't about to sign anything without reading it first. I told him I'd take a look at it later. Mark didn't push. He just nodded and said, "Take your time. But trust me, this is a great deal." The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. On the one hand, the offer sounded tempting. Who doesn't want their business to grow faster? On the other hand, there was that nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me not to trust him. Something just wasn't sitting right. Finally, after what felt like 1,000 internal debates, I decided to go ahead and read the damn thing. I figured, what's the harm? Maybe he was just trying to help, like he said. I pulled up the contract on my laptop one night, sat down with a cup of coffee, and started going through it line by line. The first few pages were pretty standard. There were a few clauses about funding, some technical stuff about intellectual property, and other boring legal jargon. But then I got to the fine print. And that's when the world started to feel like it was falling apart. You see, Mark's contract wasn't just a simple partnership agreement. No. It was something else entirely. There were terms in there that would have left me with practically no control over my own business. My clients, my intellectual property, even my personal income, he had clauses set up to take a huge chunk of it all, legally. All he had to do was get me to sign, and I'd be locked into an arrangement that would have put me at his mercy. It was like a punch to the gut. My heart was racing. I felt betrayed, angry, and, honestly, a little stupid. How had I not seen this coming? Mark had been playing me the whole time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And the worst part? I realized that if I had signed the document without reading the fine print, I would have been screwed big time. Everything I'd worked for could have been taken from me, piece by piece, all because I trusted my brother-in-law a little too much. That's why I made the decision. I wasn't going to let him win. This wasn't just a betrayal of business, it was personal. But I had to be careful. I couldn't let him know that I'd figured it out just yet. I needed to plan my next move, and I had to do it without him realizing I was onto him. So, yeah. That's where we're at right now. And trust me, things only got messier from here. After I figured out what Mark had tried to pull, I knew I had to act fast. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about stopping him from getting his hands on my business, it was about making sure I didn't get caught up in something that could ruin me. I mean, we're talking about years of hard work down the drain. So, yeah, it wasn't just personal, it was survival. I wasn't going to confront him right away. That would have been way too obvious. He had no idea I'd read the fine print and caught onto his game. I needed to make sure I had everything lined up, and more importantly, I had to be prepared for whatever comeback he had. But of course, Mark wasn't the type to let things slide. The next few days after our lunch, he started pushing harder. He kept texting me, nothing too direct, just checking in and wondering if I'd given the contract another thought. He was smooth, you know? Like he was trying to be all casual, like it was no big deal. But I could hear the pressure in his words, even though he was playing it cool. I didn't respond right away. I mean, come on, I wasn't about to just throw myself in front of the bus that easily. But then, a few days later, I got a call from my sister, his wife, Michelle. She was acting weird, way too chipper. She asked me how things were going, and I could tell she was trying to suss me out. It was a little suspicious, but I didn't want to overthink it. She kept talking about how excited Mark was about the whole business deal and how he just wanted to help me. And that's when it hit me. I realized Mark wasn't just playing me, he was playing my family. He was trying to make everyone else think I was being difficult or ungrateful for not going along with his plan. He wanted me isolated, feeling like the bad guy if I didn't play along. Now, I was getting mad. I mean, what kind of person does that? He wasn't just after my business, he was trying to turn everyone against me, twist the narrative so it looked like I was the one who was wrong. But I couldn't let myself get rattled. I needed to keep my head cool, no matter how much I wanted to punch something. So, I took a different approach. I started doing my research. I needed to find out if this was just some isolated issue or if this was part of a bigger pattern. Was Mark known for shady deals? Had he done something like this before? I dug around, asked a few mutual acquaintances, and yeah, I started connecting some dots. It turns out that Mark had pulled a similar stunt with a few other small businesses. He'd get them to sign contracts that, on the surface, looked like legit partnerships. But once they were locked in, he'd pull the rug out from under them. They'd end up getting stuck in these horrible agreements where he had all the power, and they had nothing. It hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about me. This was a whole damn scheme. Mark had been doing this for years, building a network of businesses that he controlled, all while hiding behind the facade of helping people. At this point, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I had to find a way to expose him, but without letting him know that I was onto him. I wasn't about to play into his hands and give him any ammo to take me down. But the problem was, Mark was a lot more connected than I had originally thought. I started to get paranoid. Who could I trust? My mind started running in circles. What if he had already set up a plan B in case I tried to back out? What if he had been prepping the ground for a full-on takeover and this was just the first step? I had no choice but to keep my cards close to my chest. The stakes had never felt higher, and I wasn't about to just roll over. But with every move I made, I felt the pressure mounting. Every text from Mark, every casual chat with Michelle, it felt like they were closing in, like they were trying to corner me into a place where I'd have no choice but to give in. But here's the thing, Mark had underestimated me. He thought he could play me like everyone else, that I'd just fold because I was young or naive. He didn't know the full extent of what I was willing to do to protect my business, my future. And then, there was the email. It came at the worst possible time. I was sitting at my desk late one night, going through some paperwork, when I saw it pop up in my inbox. It was from Mark's lawyer. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it, and immediately, it hit me. The email was a formal request for me to sign the contract. The wording was so slick, so calculated. It made it seem like if I didn't sign it within the next few days, I'd lose out on the opportunity forever. There were even threats, subtle, but they were there. And that's when I knew for sure Mark was serious. He wasn't just playing around. He was pushing me into a corner. At that moment, I knew I couldn't keep going back and forth with him like this. He was relentless, and if I didn't act now, I was going to lose everything. The challenge had just become a battle of wills. And Mark wasn't going to give up easily. The clock was ticking, and I had no idea how far Mark would go to get what he wanted. All I knew was that I had to move fast, before he got to me first. I won't lie to you, the pressure was starting to crush me. That email from Mark's lawyer? It hit like a freight train. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my mind racing. I could practically feel Mark's smug smile on the other side of that email, like he was watching me squirm. But I couldn't afford to let him see any weakness. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. I shut my laptop with a snap, then paced around my living room, trying to think. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. The contract was already shady enough as it was, and now Mark was pushing harder, trying to box me in with this whole final chance narrative. He was trying to make it seem like I was the one holding everything up, like I was the one causing all this tension. But I knew better. I knew exactly what he was doing, and I wasn't about to play into his hands. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I went silent. I ignored his texts. I didn't reply to his calls. I knew he'd try to corner me, but I had to stick to the plan. I'd already started looking for a lawyer, someone who could take this whole thing head on. But finding the right one wasn't easy. Mark's connections ran deep. I needed someone who wasn't intimidated by big names or shady tactics. Finally, after a few days of frantic searching, I found a lawyer. Alex was a no-nonsense kind of guy, sharp, experienced, and, most importantly, someone who didn't take shit from anyone. I'd worked with him before on some smaller business things, and I knew he'd be the perfect person to help me take down Mark. But even with Alex on my side, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was still one step ahead. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no idea how deep this went. Mark wasn't just some guy trying to trick me into signing over my business. No. This was calculated, well thought out, and professional. He wasn't just trying to steal from me, he was trying to destroy me, to turn me into some pawn in his little game. And that's when it hit me, I wasn't just fighting for my business anymore. I was fighting for my future. So, Alex and I got to work. I sent him the contract I'd received, and he immediately saw the red flags. The more we dissected it, the more we uncovered. Mark had added clauses that would have given him control over practically every aspect of my business, from how it operated to who I could hire. But it wasn't just about the business, it was personal, too. The contract would have allowed him to take a massive share of my personal assets if things went south. I couldn't let that happen. I had to find a way to flip the script. I had to make Mark realize that I wasn't some naive kid he could pull a fast one on. But I had to do it without him knowing I was onto him. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, Michelle called. I could tell something was off from the first word she said. She was trying to sound casual, but her voice had this weird, forced cheeriness to it. She told me Mark was getting worried and wanted to know if we could sit down and talk things over, just the three of us. She insisted that this was the only way to resolve things and get back on the same page. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. Mark had probably filled her head with some nonsense about me being difficult, about me not being willing to take the next step with the business. I wasn't going to play the victim, though. I wasn't about to sit there and let her manipulate me into backing down. But I knew that meeting was coming. And when it did, I had to be ready. I couldn't just rely on the legal side of things. I had to get inside Mark's head, figure out what he was really after. I had to turn the tables on him in a way he wasn't expecting. The clock was ticking. Every moment I spent not responding to him, every silence I let drag on, Mark was getting more desperate. I could feel the tension building with each day that passed. It was like a storm was brewing, and I had no idea when it was going to hit. And then, just when I thought I could finally breathe for a second, Mark made his move. He showed up at my office, unannounced. I hadn't seen him in person since that first meeting, and I wasn't ready for what was coming. I could feel my pulse quicken when I saw him standing there, casually leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed like he owned the place. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, waiting for me to speak. Finally, I broke the silence. "What are you doing here, Mark?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my stomach was twisting itself into knots. He flashed that trademark grin of his. "I figured we could talk face to face," he said smoothly. "You know, work out all the details in person. No more delays." I wasn't going to let him get under my skin, but it was hard. He had this way of making everything feel like it was my fault, like I was the one who was dragging things out. I could already see where this conversation was heading, and it wasn't good. He pulled up a chair and sat down, leaning forward like we were about to negotiate the deal of a lifetime. "Look, John," he said, "I know you're hesitant. I get it. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You can't afford to miss it." I wasn't having any of it. I wasn't going to let him talk circles around me anymore. "I'm not signing anything, Mark," I said, trying to sound confident, even though my mind was racing. "I've seen the contract. And I know exactly what you're trying to do." His face twitched for a second, like I'd caught him off guard. But then he recovered, like he always did. "You don't understand, do you? This isn't about the contract. This is about your future." It was like a challenge hanging in the air between us. And for a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the point where everything changed. "Okay, here we go. This is the part where everything explodes." Mark leaned in, that smug smile still plastered across his face. "You're making a huge mistake, John," he said, his voice low, like he was trying to reason with a stubborn child. "You've worked hard for this, but you're not going to get any further without some serious backing. You don't have the resources to keep this business afloat forever. You need me." I sat there, staring him down. The words were coming fast and smooth, but all I could think was, he really thinks I'm that dumb. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my breathing slow, like I wasn't completely losing my cool inside. "I know exactly what you're doing, Mark," I said, my voice colder than I wanted it to sound. "I'm not the idiot you think I am." He frowned, but it was that fake, dismissive frown, like he couldn't believe I was challenging him. "You think you're smarter than me? Look, we can keep dancing around this, but you know the truth. I'm the one who can help you grow, John. I'm the one who's been in this game longer. You need me." That was it. I couldn't sit there and listen to this crap anymore. All that crap he'd fed me about helping me, it was nothing more than a power play. It was about control, pure and simple. And I was done. I stood up suddenly, my chair scraping against the floor as I did. No, Mark. You're the one who needs me. My pulse was hammering, but I had to stand my ground. You think you can manipulate me, play me like a fool, but you've got no idea who you're messing with. He raised an eyebrow, like he was waiting for me to crack. So, what? You're just going to walk away from all of this? I'm offering you a chance, and you're too proud to take it? I stared him down, my mind racing. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to take on this guy, my brother-in-law, no less, and risk everything I'd worked for? My business? My family? But then, the pieces started clicking into place. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just protecting my business. I was protecting myself. Mark had played me long enough. I wasn't some puppet for him to control anymore. I took a deep breath and walked over to my desk. I could feel Mark's eyes on me, waiting for me to back down, but I wasn't going to. I pulled open the drawer where I kept all my important documents and slid out a thick stack of papers, the contract, the one he'd sent through the lawyer. He didn't speak. He just watched, probably thinking I was about to sign it, give in to whatever crap he was spouting. But I wasn't going to sign it. I was going to rip it apart. I turned to face him again, holding the contract in my hand. You want me to sign this? I said, holding it up like it was a dirty rag. You really think I'm that stupid? His expression shifted, just slightly. It was like he was finally realizing this wasn't going to go the way he'd planned. What the hell are you talking about? His voice was starting to raise, but I wasn't fazed. I tossed the contract onto the table, making sure he could see it. You see, I've read this. I've read every damn line. I leaned in closer, my eyes boring into his. And I know what you're trying to do. This whole opportunity thing? It's a trap. You're trying to take control of my business, Mark, and you're not going to get away with it. For the first time in the conversation, his mask cracked. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You think I'm trying to take over your business? He asked, his voice cold. You think I'd do that to my own family? I didn't flinch. You're not family anymore, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. This isn't about family. This is about you using me as a stepping stone, and I'm not falling for it. Mark stood up then, and for a second, I thought he might lose his temper. He was close, way too close. I could practically feel the anger radiating off him. You're making a big mistake, he spat. I'm the one who's going to make sure your business fails if you keep this up. You'll see. I'll make you regret this. I held my ground, not letting him see how much that threat actually stung. Go ahead, Mark. Try me. You think I'm scared of you? I've been running this business on my own for 5 years, and I'm not about to let you ruin it because you're too damn greedy. There was a tense pause between us, the air thick with that dangerous energy, like something was about to snap. He looked like he was weighing his options, probably wondering how far he could push me before I cracked. But I was done being pushed. Finally, after a long, uncomfortable silence, he let out a sharp exhale, and then, without another word, he walked out. But not before one last attempt to keep his hold on me. You'll regret this, he muttered, his voice full of venom as he left. This isn't over, John. You'll see. I didn't say anything. I just watched him go, a mix of relief and frustration flooding through me. Mark thought he could control everything, but I'd just taken control back. I'd stood up to him, called his bluff, and for the first time, I felt like I might actually have a shot at keeping everything I'd worked for. But I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of something bigger, and I was ready for it. The days after Mark walked out of my office felt like a whirlwind. I knew that confrontation had been a turning point, but I wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Not by a long shot. The guy didn't just give up, not when there was something he wanted so badly. I could almost feel his gears turning, thinking of some new way to pull me back into his web. But I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. Still, the pressure weighed on me. I kept expecting him to show up at my door, send me more angry emails, or worse, do something underhanded behind the scenes. But strangely enough, the next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't trust it. Mark was a master of playing the long game, and I had a feeling he was just waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. He had the patience of a predator, and I was the prey. But this time, I wasn't just going to sit there and let him stalk me. I kept my guard up, eyes and ears open for anything that could signal his next move. And sure enough, a few days later, I got a call from Michelle. Her voice was soft, like she was trying to ease into the conversation. "Hey, John," she said. "I've been talking to Mark, and, well, he's pretty upset with how things went down. He doesn't want this to drive a wedge between you two. He's still trying to make it right." "Right. Make it right." I could practically hear the manipulation dripping off her words. The thing was, I wasn't angry at Michelle. She was stuck in the middle, caught up in whatever mess Mark had created. I knew that if I didn't handle this carefully, I could lose her, too. But I wasn't going to let Mark win. I wasn't going to let him turn this around and make me out to be the villain. I stayed calm, though. "I get it, Michelle. But Mark's the one who tried to screw me over. And now, he's the one who has to fix it. I can't just pretend like nothing happened." There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "I understand. But just think about it, okay? He really does want to help you, John. He's just trying to do what's best for both of you." That hit a nerve. I could almost see Mark in my mind, spinning the same tired narrative about helping me, about doing what's best for the family. He always played the long-suffering hero, trying to make you feel guilty for not seeing things his way. But I wasn't buying it anymore. "I'll think about it, Michelle. But don't expect me to back down. Not this time." I hung up with a heavy heart. I loved my sister, but I wasn't about to let her manipulate me either. This wasn't just about business, it was about respect. About standing my ground. And I couldn't afford to let Mark get his claws back into me. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from Mark was starting to feel a little less ominous and a little more normal. I began to think maybe, just maybe, I'd won. Maybe he realized I wasn't the easy target he thought I was. But even as I started to breathe a little easier, a part of me was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then, one afternoon, I got an unexpected email. This one wasn't from Mark, though. It was from his lawyer. At first, my stomach dropped. Here it was, the bombshell. But when I opened it, I found something that completely threw me off. The email was a formal retraction of the contract. A full withdrawal, with no strings attached. Mark was stepping back, completely. The email was phrased like a business decision, no apologies, no explanations, just the cold legalese of a decision that had been made. After careful consideration, the email read, "Mark's office has decided to withdraw from the proposed agreement. We wish you continued success in your endeavors." I stared at the screen for a moment, not sure if I should be relieved or confused. Was this it? Was Mark really just giving up? But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Mark didn't just give up. He would never just give up. The email was just a tactic, part of the game. But at least for now, I had my business back. I had my control. I spent the next few weeks getting everything in order, tightening up the legal aspects of my business and making sure Mark's fingerprints weren't on anything. I wasn't taking any chances. I had learned the hard way just how dangerous it was to trust someone like him. But I also knew that I had to protect myself. There was no room for mistakes, not while I was this close to everything I wanted. Mark never did show up again, at least not in person. But I didn't let my guard down. I couldn't. I'd been through too much. I'd seen the worst sides of people, of family, and I wasn't going to let myself get burned again. As for Michelle, she and I still talk. Things have been a little strained between us, but I don't blame her. She was just caught in the crossfire of Mark's mess. I'm not sure if she fully understands the lengths he went to, but that's her battle to fight, not mine. I know I made the right choice. And if she ever sees the truth of it all, I'll be there to explain it. But for now, I've got my business back. I've got control. And I've learned a valuable lesson. Don't let anyone, no matter how close they are, take advantage of you. Don't let anyone pull you into their game, especially when the stakes are this high. As for Mark, well, I'm pretty sure this won't be the last time he tries something. But next time, he won't catch me off guard. I'll be ready.